This is the first video in a series that I'm doing exploring what the point of education is. And in this video, we're looking at what the view from the Department for Education is in the UK. We're looking at this because ultimately the decisions made at the Department of Education is what our children and young people experience on the ground. But let's have a look at what their mission and purpose is. We enable children and learners to thrive by protecting the vulnerable and ensuring the delivery of excellent standards of education, training and care. Their reason for existence is this helps realise everyone's potential, and that powers our economy, strengthens society and increases fairness. So they're very clear that their mission is to have people who are in education end up driving the economy. If we look at what their priorities are, they say that the priorities in the Department for Education is to drive economic growth through improving the skills pipeline, levelling up productivity and supporting people to work. So what we have here quite clearly is education policy that is grounded in neoliberalist principles. For those of you who need a refresher on what neoliberalism is, it's a political philosophy whereby all of society's needs and desires are met by the market. There's also this idea of freedom associated with the neoliberalism, freedom to choose, freedom to have control over your own destiny, freedom of the consumer basically. So let me tell you why I would argue that neoliberalist principles are incompatible in an education context. This is morally problematic to put the idea of winners and losers in an education context. Education is a right. Being a consumer and buying stuff is not a right. You have the privilege to buy stuff, but you have a right to education. To put the idea of winners and losers in education is not morally defensible. You can't have people lose. Basically, this is people's life chances we're talking about here. The second thing is this idea of competition. In a business context, you have this thing called competitive advantage, and there are 5 measures of competitive advantage. I'll give you an example. If you look at Waitrose and Lidl, these are 2 very successful supermarkets. They serve different types of customers, but they have different competitive advantage. You go to Waitrose, you want 15 different types of ketchup. You don't go there if you want to save money. Go to Lidl, it's a different story. It's cheap and you have very good quality, but you don't have 15 types of ketchup available. You have 2 types of ketchup. It's the same type, but in 2 different size bottles. That's the difference. Both of them work. Both of them have different competitive advantages. In the education space, you don't have that. The only measurement of competition is one thing, one metric, and that is results. You can take your result data and view it from different angles, but ultimately it's the same thing. That's not genuine competition. The second thing is choice. The reason why the idea of choice is problematic in an education context is because if you send your child to a state school, you don't really have a choice. You may think you have a choice, but let's just look at what that is. You have to apply to your local authority and you have to put 3 schools down. Or you don't have to, you could put 1 down, but it's not guaranteed you'll get that one. You're going to get allocated a place. You can say what you want, but you don't actually choose it. You get allocated it. You can of course change schools, you can go through a system of appeal, and it doesn't really involve the wider society because you've got people who are working, they don't have time to go visit schools, they don't have time to ring up the council every 5 minutes to find out if there's any places available on the other waiting lists and rah rah rah. This involves work, and therefore not everybody has the same agency. It's not like going into a supermarket, blanching at the prices, turning around and coming out again. Consumer choice in a supermarket context is not the same as consumer choice in an education context. There is choice if you look at the private school system, but this excludes the majority of the population and therefore compromises equality. So it seems to me that neoliberalism in an education policy does a good job at upholding a class system and driving inequality. So why do we have it as an education policy? If you can think of any advantages to having neoliberalism as a positive thing in an education policy, comment below, stitch this video. I see it's hugely problematic.